After 57 weeks of reverse dieting, my client Vivian is ready to start her cut. So today I'm going to give you a recap on the reverse dieting process, and I'm going to start a new series where I take you through the cutting process from start to finish. So if this is something you're interested in, make sure you're subscribed and click on that bell notification so you don't miss anything. Alright, if you're new here, last year I took a client of mine through the entire reverse dieting process and documented it week by week so you could see how the process can work. Anyway, now that she's done with the reverse diet, I'm going to bring you through the cutting process, and the whole reason I do this is so you can get a general idea of how a reverse and cut process should look, but you have to understand that these numbers are very specific to Vivian, and this is just kind of a general guideline to give you some ideas, but understand that everyone is unique and you have to take genetics, dieting history, and everything else into account. In the last update that I did for the reverse diet series, which was all the way back in July now, I mentioned that we probably wouldn't be making any more updates because for the most part, she was just going to be holding those higher calories, maybe making a small increase here or there if she maintains for too long, and that she was just going through basically kind of a lean bulk at that point to help build some muscle and also further improve her metabolism and set herself up for now. As a recap, when we started her reverse diet, she was maintaining at about 128 pounds on 1,700 calories. After 24 weeks, we got her calories up over 800 calories more, and she was actually down 2 pounds at that point. When we left off with this series, we were done with week 34, and she was up to 130 pounds, which is 2 pounds up from her start, but the goal was to put her in a small surplus to focus on 1, continuing to improve her metabolism, and 2, build some extra muscle, not only for body comp purposes, but also to help improve metabolism even further. As I suspected, we ended up holding those higher calories that we left off with for over 20 weeks before I finally made a small increase of another about 50 calories just because she had been maintaining for a while and we wanted to get her in that small surplus to optimally build. And that brings us to today where we are ready to start the cut after 57 weeks, after an entire year of reversing and holding higher calories. I am so excited to bring this to you, to show you all the benefits and how much it pays off when you have that patience and you play the long game. I cannot tell you how pumped I am to go through this with you. And I just hope it will show you the reward you can have by not rushing the process, not yo-yo dieting, and sticking it out for the long run. With regards to scale weight, as I mentioned, when we started she was 128. By the time we got to more of the lean bulking phase, she was 130. She finished at about 136, so she gained 8 pounds in total over the course of 57 weeks, which is pretty fantastic. And as far as body composition and measurements go, they're pretty dang comparable when you put them side by side, and that's fantastic and really shows that she's put herself in a great place. But even if it was worse, even if she had gained more fat than we had wanted, it would still be worth the trade-off of the improved metabolism to set herself up for what's to come. And not only is she in a better spot metabolically, but she has greatly improved her relationship with food. She's gotten away from that all or nothing mentality. And these are all big factors in setting yourself up for success. And that's something you need to keep in mind with the reverse process. It's not only about building metabolism. This is a good opportunity to work on your relationship with food too. It's really hard to include more foods into your diet that you enjoy and work on those things if you barely eat any food. But by going through the process of a reverse and getting calories up, now you can include more things and fit it into your budget, so to speak, and then you can work on these things to set yourself up like we've done here. Okay, I want to bring you through the changes we made to start this cut, but before I do that, I want to make sure there's something that you understand. These numbers are specific to Vivian. You cannot take these things and just apply them to yourself and expect them to work. It doesn't work that way. I've shown you from the beginning what kind of changes we make. I explain along the way why we're making them, and it gives you things to consider, but every person is unique. Not just physically, but also mentally and how you handle things. Now, Vivian's been roughly maintaining her weight on about 2,570 calories while doing about 40 minutes of cardio per week, while also strength training 5 times per week. Now, with regards to strength training, a mistake that a lot of people make is they completely change up their programming based on whether they're cutting or building, and honestly, it should stay pretty much the same no matter what you're doing. It's just the cardio and the nutrition we alter to either put you in a calorie deficit, maintenance, or a surplus. Now in Vivian's case, to start things off, her daily calories are going to be dropped by a little over 500 calories per day, going from 135 grams of protein, 315 grams of carbs, and 86 grams of fat to 135 grams of protein, 230 grams of carbs, and 65 grams of fat. Something to consider here is as her calories got really high, I gave her the okay to go ahead and interchange her carbs and fats however she wanted, as long as she matched calories and protein, because research has been very clear that it doesn't really matter, especially when calories get high. You don't have to worry about having too low of fat or too low of carbs. You're gonna have a sufficient amount of both. Now, as we go through the cutting process, that changes a little bit. We want to get a little bit more specific. That doesn't mean she can't do any interchanging, and especially if things get off one day, that's certainly something you can do. But the lower calories get, the more benefit there is to being more specific and more on top of your macros, as mentioned, to make sure you have a sufficient amount of both, especially when calories get really low. And especially for Vivian, as a performance athlete, as she is a powerlifter, I do like to try to keep carbs a little higher just to help aid with performance. Now you may see that drop in calories of over 500 right off the bat and think, wow, that's a lot and seems extreme. And I'm going to explain why and the benefit behind it. But before I get into that, I want to talk about something else first. One thing I talked to Vivian about was in the beginning stages, I wanted to make sure I kept her daily calories the same and not including a higher day calorie like a refeed, because I have found that it seems like in the beginning stages of a cut, a higher calorie day can kind of work against you, whereas down the road, refeeds can be beneficial. Early on, it's almost like the body sees that there's higher calories again and doesn't think it needs to tap into fat for energy. And all I can say is I have just found that refeeds early on tend to work against people. So I like to wait a minimum of 2 weeks before adding any refeeds into a cut. Now there is one caveat to that, and that is if you just need that high calorie day to help stick to the diet. If you know you're gonna go ahead and binge if your calories are the same and you don't get a day of higher calories, you should go ahead and implement it right away, because that's gonna be more important to stick to the program. And this is where it goes back to, we always have to know ourselves mentally and what works well for us. So if you need that high day and it's gonna help you stick to the plan better, by all means implement them right away. But if you can wait 2 weeks, I think you'll be better off. Now I could go into a lot more detail about refeeds, but I'm gonna hold off and just wait, because down the road, we'll get into them and I'll talk about them as this series progresses. Now, as far as cardio goes, I'm gonna increase it from 40 minutes to 75 minutes for the week. And honestly, I typically like to do a little bit more, but with Vivian's case, for one, her calories are already super high and she's in such a good spot metabolically from being so patient for so long that we can make more changes through calories. And for two, she's a powerlifter. She needs to consider performance at all times, and I want to make sure that she can perform her lifts as well as possible. So keeping cardio a little bit lower will assist with that. All right, let's circle back to why I dropped her calories by over 500 right off the bat. A lot of people see this and think it's too much or don't understand why, especially when we went through the reverse process and we were just slowly increasing calories. It seems counterintuitive to make such a big drop right away. But understand the reason for this is you want to make sure you elicit a response in the body. If you make too small of changes right off the bat, it's almost like you're reverse dieting in reverse and it's going to work against you. If you think about what we're trying to accomplish in a reverse, we're trying to change your metabolism. We're trying to speed it up while minimizing changes in body fat. So that's why we do it slowly and slowly increase the calories so that your metabolism can adjust. Well, when you go into a cutting phase, your metabolism is going to slow with the lower calories. There's no way around this, but you don't want to minimize changes in body fat when you're going through a cut, right? You want to make sure that you're seeing results. So if you slowly decrease calories and don't make a big enough drop, your metabolism is going to start adjusting down to those lower calories, but you won't see much in way of results, and it's going to make the process take that much longer and be that much harder. So you want to make a big enough drop to make sure you elicit a good response, and then as things plateau and slow down the road, you can make smaller adjustments to get it going again, but we'll show you that as that happens down the road. Another thing to consider as well is everyone seems to have this kind of like threshold of calories that you need to get to before your body will start releasing fat. And sometimes even with a bigger drop, you just don't get to that threshold and your body doesn't respond and you have to make some more adjustments until you get there, and that's okay. So if you find that you make a bigger drop and things just aren't going, don't panic and freak out. Understand that maybe you need to drop another 100, 150 calories or so until you hit that threshold. And then boom, the body will start responding and things will go. So I'm hopeful and I do think that this will work for Vivian, but we'll just have to see how things go, and if it doesn't happen, we will adjust. But with that being said, I typically would not recommend making any adjustments until you've been doing it for at least 2 weeks, because sometimes it just takes time for the body to respond. Sometimes people see a lot of weight loss right away, but they don't see much change in body composition or measurements. Some people see big changes in measurements and body comp, but the weight doesn't move at all. So you want to make sure you're looking at all different things and understand that sometimes it just takes a while for the body to get going. So you don't want to rush it, but you don't want to wait around too long either. So anyway, I'm hopeful that these adjustments will get things going for her, but if they won't, we'll just see what happens and we'll adjust accordingly, and eventually things will. And I have no doubt, based on what she's done up until now, things are going to go great. It's just a matter of time. Okay, another thing I want to talk about here is if you should set a deadline for your cut. I find that for a lot of people, it's really beneficial to set how long your cut's going to be ahead of time. So say, for instance, you can say, I'm going to cut for 16 weeks or 12 weeks or 20 weeks or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, but you just have that deadline. And the reason this can be beneficial is because it can help you stay focused. If it's open-ended, it can be hard to stick to the plan. And if you don't stick to the plan very well and have a lot of bouts of overeating and ups and downs, your metabolism will still slow down to those lower calories, but you won't see the benefit of as much fat loss. And this is going to make it so you have to get more aggressive, have to do more cardio, eat less calories. You're going to have to do it for a longer period of time, and it's going to drag on. It's going to get frustrating, making it that much more difficult to stick to the plan. And it's just this horrible snowball effect. So sometimes by having that deadline, you can go, okay, it's going to be over in X weeks. I can stick with it until then because it's going to be done soon. And there's a saying out there, action requires urgency, results require patience. Sometimes if there's no urgency behind what you're doing, it's hard to take action. So setting that deadline can be helpful. That being said, I really like to not have a deadline when possible because I just like to make adjustments and see how things are going and do things on the fly and not be kind of like nailed down to a certain thing. With Vivian, I feel like where she's at mentally, we are going to be able to do this without a deadline. So we're trying that at first. However, this is our first cut together, so I don't know this for sure. So we're going to give it a shot. If adherence becomes a big issue and she's struggling with things, then okay, maybe we'll set some sort of a plan. Sometimes you can say, okay, I'm going to diet for 16 weeks and have a 2-week diet break in the middle, or whatever you want to do. I just really prefer to go, okay, things are starting to slow down, let's do a diet break. Oh, you're not feeling so great, let's do a diet break. Let's cut for a little bit longer if you're still feeling good. Because if you can take what the body gives you, it makes it a little bit easier to get better long-term results. So again, this is where individuality really comes into play. All right, as far as this cutting series goes, I'm gonna do roughly bi-weekly updates. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you are subscribed now so you don't miss these updates and you can stay up to date and learn more about how to go through the cutting process for yourself. If you missed the reverse diet series and want to get caught up, then you can check that out at the top here. Otherwise, this video at the bottom is something I think you'll really enjoy, so make sure you check that one out next instead. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below and I promise I'll get back to you, and I'll see you next time.